What is good, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what the news is saying about the markets, how earnings went from Microsoft and Google so far, and what's happening with all these other pieces of news affecting the markets as we have Jerome Powell giving a speech for tomorrow. But before I break anything down, all this information, before I get into any more details, let me just mention a couple of things. I am personally not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Webull link, which is down below in the description. If you sign up for Webull, the link down below, and deposit any amount of money into the account, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. And this offer ends in just 7 days, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, let's break down what's going on with the markets and Tesla. Tesla was up 2.09% for the day, getting a very nice pop in the morning, hitting our target of 220. And then Tesla started to cool off a little bit. I gave you guys a warning about this intraday. And then after that, Tesla remained very, very flat as the day went on. But we saw SPY and the QQQ trying to bounce as time went on too, but Tesla was kind of weaker. Now the question that remains is, will Tesla continue to kind of like trade sideways? Are we going to see a little drop in Tesla to fill this gap all the way down to 212? Or is Tesla going to try to bounce from here? That's going to be the question going into tomorrow. But for tomorrow, we have some big things affecting the way the market's going to move. First and foremost, we had some big earnings that came out for today after the market closed. And right now you could see that Microsoft and Google are making very, very big moves. Alphabet, aka Google, just to be correct there, but Alphabet is down despite the fact that they had relatively strong earnings overall. If you look at their revenue, it's up 11%. That's not bad whatsoever relative to the previous year. And then on top of that, their earnings showed a beat for EPS. They beat on that. They beat on revenue. So this was pretty decent earnings. Their YouTube advertising revenue was up. They beat expectations. Same thing with the traffic acquisition costs, very close to expectations, but their cloud revenue was a little bit lower than expected. And this is why it started to sell off the way it did. Now, this is leading to some concerns amongst investors because cloud revenue is one of their top revenue streams. And it's concerning because of the fact that many individuals are just fearing alongside investors that the economic softening right now is affecting Google's performances, and this could lead to more downside. So this is leading to some fears, but I think that this drop is very exaggerated. I don't think that it should be down this hard after beating on EPS and revenue. It's down over 6% right now in the 130s. So I mean, could you argue that this is something that could have happened? Sure, but it just doesn't make that much sense considering that they beat on pretty much everything else and they did relatively well. So sometimes things like this happen for earnings. I think that this is an exaggerated drop. So I believe Google will bounce eventually later into the future. And we're going to be watching for that going into tomorrow and beyond. However, Microsoft is the one that's doing a lot better. Microsoft is helping the market stay afloat, and this could help the market even more as time goes on because Microsoft is up over 3%, and they did relatively well for earnings. If you look at their earnings, their profit is up 27% as their growth is accelerating. On top of this, EPS was a beat, revenue was a beat for them. They did relatively well. Revenue is up 13% year over year. And on top of all of this, you can see right here the net income is still increasing 27%. Their intelligence cloud segment produced 24 plus billion in revenue, and they're continuing to grow as revenue from different streams is increasing. So this is great news for them. Nice revenue that's coming out. They should be saying AI many, many times to help the share price, and they're doing relatively well. Okay, very, very good news for them. I'm very proud of this company's growth, and I really love their fundamentals. They're just continuing to improve as time goes on. So this is great news for Microsoft. This is helping the market hold up. They're up quite nicely, and this could help us going into tomorrow. Now, when it comes to other earnings affecting us, as a reminder, we have Boeing and T-Mobile for tomorrow. It's going to be big for the communications sectors for Wednesday. And then after the market closes, we have Meta and IBM announcing earnings. And then for Thursday, we have Amazon and a couple of others like Intel. So watch for these. Meta and IBM are going to be the big ones after the market closes for tomorrow. And then when it comes to the Fear and Greed Index, this is less fearful than before. We're just on fear mode. We're not as extremely fearful as before, which is a slight improvement. On top of this, looking at other things affecting the markets for tomorrow, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech at the end of the day. But to start us off, we have new home sales coming out 30 minutes after the market opens, some gasoline data, nothing too big as time goes on. But then starting at around 11:30 a.m., we have the 17-week bill auction, so some more treasury data coming out, which could cause some more volatility, but possibly nothing too insane. And then after the market closes tomorrow, we have Jerome Powell giving a speech. Now, whatever Jerome Powell says could affect the market, especially going into Thursday. I'm not 100% sure how this is going to look with all this data coming up, but here's what I think is very possible. The market may start off a little weak tomorrow and then start to bounce intraday, and we may see a lot of buyers step in to start pushing the market up. And if the market is pumping and pumping and pumping, be very, very careful because on Thursday, right on Thursday, which is going to be 2 days from now, we have the GDP numbers coming out, and this could lead to yields going up, which could slow the market down. So if we pump really hard tomorrow, be open minded to the possibility of a trap approaching Jerome Powell's speech and also the GDP numbers that could slow the markets down for Thursday. So there's a possibility of that. All right. So hopefully this wasn't too complicated. I'm going to talk more about this on the charts to make it much easier to see. But first, let's talk about this news. We had some news for Tesla. The 2024 Cybertruck won't offer the promised $40,000 single motor setup, according to an NHTSA document. Now, this is in my opinion, not like insanely horrible news because the Cybertruck is just still a massively widely accepted car right now. Millions of people are just trying to get their hands on it to buy it. There's a massive backlog of orders. I believe that this is not going to really stop them like too much. I think it's just going to be a hit anyways. And I believe that despite this, there are pieces of news coming out that the Cybertruck is going to be very heavy, and that's just what people want. I mean, there were important tests going on with it a couple of days ago. So, in my opinion, even though this is not the best of news, it's going to be okay with the Cybertruck. I'm still bullish for it as time goes on. So now moving forward with what's going on, I just want to remind everyone that when it comes to volume, we had 118 million for Tesla, which is not bad, very close to average. And we're still getting some overweight ratings from Morgan Stanley and Wedbush. Price ratio is trying to base at this 0.5 level, which means Tesla's trying to gain some strength. Maybe it's not insane, but it's still decent. Wednesdays tend to be green about 48.5% of the time historically. And remember, November tends to be much stronger than October historically as well. Expect more volatility at noon Eastern time and also at 2 p.m. That's when Tesla tends to make the most volatile moves historically. And that's pretty much it for now when it comes to data. So once again, guys, we have some new home sales data and just minor pieces of data for the day. And then Jerome Powell gives his speech after the market closes tomorrow. So how do I think the market's going to move? I'm going to start off with Tesla, switch over to Tesla right now. How is Tesla looking? Well, Tesla's looking very flat. It looks like it's going to make a big move as it's getting very tight. But I do see something that's concerning, and that's the fact that we have a gap below that has not filled yet. And if you look at the gap, it's down here at this 212 area. And seeing the fact that SPY and these tickers have established some bearish divergences during the after hours, there is a chance the market cools off a little bit in the morning, and this may cause Tesla to come down to fill this gap and then rebound intraday. So there is most definitely a risk of that potentially happening, where Tesla comes down to 210 to 212 and then rebounds and see buyers try to push it right back up to the 50 EMA. And I think that could be happening for tomorrow if we end up losing 215. If we break and hold below 215 this time we might see this gap get filled. So just be very careful on Tesla at those levels. So when it comes to levels to watch for on Tesla, 215 is going to be a key support. If we lose that, this 212 area is going to be the next major support for it. And we have a gap down here, so we have gap support there as well. So we could come down. If we lose 215, we fail to hold it, I could see Tesla technically drop towards 212 to fill that gap. And if we don't bounce off 212, watch 210 and 208. For resistance, watch 216.8, 218, 220, and then 222.5 and 225. Now, what's the most likely possibility? Tesla still has this inverse head and shoulders like structure, and it could be on a nice uptrend temporarily. There's a chance it might retrace a little bit, get this liquidity grab, then we might see buyers push it right back up. My prediction is it's going to drop a little bit, then we're going to see buyers come in and push it right back up and try to push it back towards 220. I think it's going to drop and then possibly pump. But make sure you watch these levels just for safety, because tomorrow is a data, not really a data heavy day, but it's gonna have some data, and there may be some not necessarily like fear, but kind of like apprehensive behaviors approaching Jerome Powell's speech. So we're going to be very careful. But I believe it's possible we kind of like drop a bit and bounce intraday, and we see some buyers stepping in. Now for SPY, we have a possible inverse head and shoulders developing on the chart. It's still holding up quite decently. Now, if we're really bullish, you want to see it break and hold above 425. If we achieve that, we're going to be looking for a big push to the upside. If we fail to do so, it needs to break below 422 to come down towards 420 flat in the 420 area. And then that's going to be key support. So what do I think SPY is going to do? Here's my prediction. Looking at, not Tesla, SPY, I think that there is a risk of SPY potentially coming down a little bit from here, just a tiny bit, because on the 30-minute time frame, there's a bearish divergence. We might see it retest 422. And if SPY, fails at that level, we could see it drop a little bit lower and then bounce, or it could bounce from there. My prediction, however, would be that 422 is key support. We have 420 below that. And then we have 423.5 as resistance, 425 above that, 426.25. And if we break 426 on SPY, 428 and 430 are possibilities. So what do I think is going to happen? Once again, we may cool off a little bit, retest 422, and I think buyers should step in very, very soon. And they may launch this thing back up towards 425. If we break it, watch 426.25. And we may be seeing that level right before Jerome Powell's speech. Now, if we break 426.25, I would not rule out the possibility of us getting up to 428, if not 430 to 431. But we need to see 426.25 break first. Now, my best prediction would be a little drop and then a bounce. So we're going to be watching for that first before anything else. For the QQQ, same thing. The same thing is developing on the chart, basically. The QQQ also has a bearish divergence on the 30 minutes time frame. We could see this retrace towards 356. If not 355, if we lose 358. So there's a risk of it coming down a little bit. Then buyers should step in and try to push it back towards 360. Now we have an inverse head and shoulders on the 30 minutes time frame right here, and there could be more upside coming for the triple Q. But first and foremost, we might see some selling that comes. A little bit more selling. It could come down towards 356, a little bit more, and then this inverse head and shoulders could help it launch higher as time goes on. So it may sell a little bit, then bounce towards 362 all over again. If it breaks it, we could get very close to 364. So a drop and a pop is very possible on the QQQ if buyers come back. And we're going to be watching these levels very, very carefully. Don't forget to watch 358 as support. If we lose that, watch 356, 355, 353.5, and then 352.5. For resistance, watch 360, 361.69, 362.5, and then 364. My guts tells me there'll be a small drop and possibly a bounce, and we could see some more buyers stepping in. But remember, this is just approaching Jerome Powell's speech. We'll see what happens after that. Now, moving forward, Nvda looks like it may retrace a little bit because of this. Let me find Nvidia's charts. Because of this potential bearish divergence, we might see Nvidia cool off a little bit. We might see it come down towards the 200 EMA at 431 to 435. But I think 431 is where we might see it head towards. If we lose it, we could see 425. I'm not really counting on it to drop that hard, but those are some levels to watch for. So for support, watch 435. Basically, if we lose that, technically there's 432.5, 431. And if we lose that, I can see this thing coming down towards these next support zones, such as 425 and beyond that. If we break 438, we could see this thing pushing even higher towards 440. If that breaks, watch 444. My prediction would be this thing sinks a little bit more towards 431, then we bounce, see buyers try to push it back towards 438. And if we break that, we could be pushing all the way back up towards 440. If we get above 440, that's when we could see 444 and all these different levels. But for now, just watch a little drop and a pop for Nvidia. Last but not least, we have Aapl stock. The same thing is developing. We have a bearish divergence. Let me just really quickly show this to you before I conclude this video. For the 30 minutes time frame, there's a bearish divergence on Aapl. Aapl may cool off a little bit towards 172.5. It could cool off a little bit, but buyers should step in very close to 172 in my opinion. If we lose 172, we could turn bearish and retest 171.5. Then below that, we have 170. So watch those supports. For resistance, watch 173.5, 174.5, and then 175. What do I think it's going to do? My prediction would be this thing drops a little bit towards 172, then buyers step in and launch it right back towards 175. That is the most likely possibility, so watch for a little pop, a little drop, and then a pop. Now, the market could kind of like pump approaching Jerome Powell's speech. If that happens, make sure you're very careful. I personally, I'm not giving financial advice when I say this, but I would actually secure profits because who knows what Jerome Powell is going to say, and who knows what's going to happen with the GDP numbers for Thursday morning before the market opens. So all this data is coming out between Wednesday after the market close and then Thursday before market open. So people will not have a chance to exit before all these pieces of data come out. And that's why if we do get a pop, be very careful and do not be way too greedy. So can I see more upside? Yes, I'm leaning a bit more in that direction. We may start off kind of weak and then see buyers step in approaching Powell's speech. That's a real possibility. The IWM has a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. We could see it kind of retrace a bit, then bounce towards 167 all over again towards this imbalance. But you need to be watching 166.5 break first to get to 167.5. So watch that resistance. For support, watch 165. If it loses that, then 163 is coming. But my gut tells me it's going to like drop a little bit, then bounce and start pushing as time goes on. For another stock out there, such as Microsoft, we're looking quite decent. We're trying to hold 340, which is a key support. That was previous resistance becoming support. And if we manage to break this, we could see this thing try to push up towards 345. So we're going to be watching these levels very carefully. If we lose 340, watch 336 as support. My gut tells me this thing may drop a little bit and try to continue pushing. It may just kind of trade sideways between 340 and 350 as time goes on, and we'll see if this could bounce and break out or not. For AMD, we have a bearish divergence. It may come down towards 101. And if that fails us, watch 100.5. Then buyers may step in to establish this inverse head and shoulders. Could be also establishing kind of like a double bottom here. So it could drop a bit more, then try to bounce back up towards 102.5. So look for a drop and a bounce as time goes on. Netflix also happens to have this bearish divergence. Watch it cool off towards 410. And if it loses that, watch 407, then a bounce after that and push back up towards 415. So watch for a drop and bounce on there. The VIX is approaching the 30 minutes 200 EMA. Maybe the VIX bounces a tiny bit right here, gets back up into the 19s, and then it could reject later on and start cooling off because the market may cool off a little bit and then bounce if the VIX continues to sink. And then we're going to be watching to see what Jerome Powell causes. The dollar index is forming a potential bullish wedge. If it breaks out a little bit, this could cool the market off a little bit, causing a slight pullback. And then we might see buyers step in and possibly establish a bearish divergence in the dollar to cool it off. So the dollar might pump, causing the stock market to drop. Then the dollar might start cooling off, which may cause the market to pump later. All right, that's what that is suggesting. Coinbase is looking kind of decent. If it holds this resistance right here above 82, we could be looking for a move back up towards 87. If we fail to hold 81, watch it come down towards 78. What does my gut tell me? I think it may come down towards 80, then try to bounce and start pushing back up. We're going to be watching these levels. Now, Google, this drop is exaggerated. It's currently holding 130. If it loses that, watch 128. That's going to be the next support to watch for. Google is still, in my opinion, very oversold, so there should be a bounce coming soon. It should make its way back up towards 136 over the next couple of trading days by next week. The 10-year Treasury yield is still kind of flat and may remain flat tomorrow, but then the GDP numbers may affect it for Thursday. For Amazon, we're looking a little bit more bearish. We may see it cool off a little bit more towards this support at 125, if not 124. We have a bearish divergence on it, so it's no surprise it's cooling off. I don't think it's going to come down to 124. It might just be like 125. Then we might see a bounce since we have a potential slanted inverse head and shoulders like structure. So watch for a drop and bounce. And I think that could still lead to more upside later on. For Meta, it may also cool off towards this 307 area. If we lose it, I think 305 could be retested. But we might see buyers step in between 305 and 300. So it may drop a little bit more, then bounce and start pushing back up towards 312. Look for a little bit more dropping than a bounce on Meta, and I think this is going to translate throughout the markets. All right, so anyways, that's it for the video. Thank you all so much for listening. Tesla in the market to the moon, because even though we may see some temporary downside, there's going to be a nice bounce likely coming later on for tomorrow. And then we'll see what happens with Powell and all the data. But I will keep you guys updated tomorrow. And with that said, have an absolutely spectacular day. Thank you again, and peace out.